On Friday, March 20th in Washington, the President of the United States left the White House and was directly confronted by journalists. The first question was direct. What about the war? What about Iran? Donald Trump's response was firm and clear. I don't want a ceasefire. You don't have a ceasefire when you're literally annihilating the adversary. This statement, given in front of the cameras, set the tone that the United States was not willing to back down. However, the following day, the same president announced the temporary suspension of sanctions on Iranian oil. This measure is circumstantial. It is valid for a short time and covers only a limited cargo of oil, about 140 million barrels over 30 days. In practice, this represents indirect funding for the adversary that Trump claimed to be annihilating. The stated objective is to increase supply in the global market to curb rising energy prices, which are already worrying American consumers and allies. Ironically, this concession was a long-standing Iranian demand in negotiations over the nuclear program, something Iran failed to obtain through diplomatic channels, but now gains amidst the conflict. Dear viewers, this reveals a tactical contradiction that deserves attention. On one hand, the rhetoric of total military victory. On the other, an economic opening that eases pressure on Tehran. For the American public, this directly affects their wallets. Gasoline prices in the U.S. are already fluctuating, and any relief is welcome. But at the same time, it raises questions about strategic coherence. The decision does not alter the military situation, but it signals that the administration considers controlling energy prices an immediate priority. Analyzing it neutrally, this suspension is not a sign of weakness, but a pragmatic market tool. Iran, in turn, sees this as a symbolic victory. What it couldn't achieve at the negotiating table, it obtained through the pressure of war. For those of you who follow geopolitics, remember, oil is the lifeblood of the global economy. Any movement, even temporary, alters financial flows and investor expectations. There is no absolute victory here. There is calculation. The coming days will show whether this measure will be extended or revoked. Stay tuned, because the market reacts in real time. This is the reality we are living in. A war that mixes bombs with barrels of oil. Iran's main trump card in this crisis is the Strait of Hormuz, the most vital artery of the world energy market. Navigating it in peacetime already requires extreme caution. The strait connects the Persian Gulf, home to 5 of the world's 10 largest oil producers, to the Gulf of Oman. Ships travel through corridors only 3 kilometers wide in each direction. The president of the Brazilian Petroleum Institute described the navigation as challenging. Tankers need to pass with extreme care, especially when one is going up and another is going down the route. Virtually all the oil exported by Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the Emirates, Kuwait, and Iran passes through there. Any disruption generates immediate concern in the markets. Blocking the strait is technically easier than navigating it. The already high risk drives up maritime insurance prices, making some operations unfeasible. For the United States and Israel, freeing the strait alone would be extremely complex. Therefore, Trump initiated contacts with 7 allied countries in Europe and Asia for coordinated maritime security action. So far, however, Asians and Europeans have signaled clear disagreement. My friends in the United States, this is crucial for the American economy. The oil that reaches refineries and gas stations depends on this route. If the flow decreases, the price goes up, and you feel it in your car's fuel tank and your electricity bill. Iran uses the strait as a bargaining chip. It doesn't need to close it completely. It just needs to increase the risk for the overall cost to rise. With neutrality, we see that the strait is not just a physical corridor, but a strategic weapon. The United States has the most powerful navy in the world, but relying on reluctant allies complicates the calculation. This dynamic explains why the war is not just about missiles. It involves economic factors that affect every continent. The American public needs to understand that what happens in Hormuz reaches the supermarket in a few weeks. It's not distant. It's direct. Follow the next moves, because any alteration in maritime traffic changes the geopolitical game instantly. When European and Asian allies refused the request for help, Trump resorted to his most used tool, social media. The post was direct and intense. Without the United States, NATO is a paper tiger. They didn't want to join the fight to stop a nuclear-powered Iran. Now that the fight is militarily won with very little danger to them, they complain about high oil prices, but they don't want to help open the Strait of Hormuz, a simple military maneuver, which is the only reason for the high prices. So easy for them, with so little risk. Cowards. And we will remember. Not even the strong tone convinced the Europeans. The German defense minister responded precisely. It's difficult to imagine what a few European frigates could do in the Strait of Hormuz that the mighty United States Navy can no longer do. The message is clear. If the operation is so simple and victory is already guaranteed, why don't the U.S. handle it alone? Dear American viewers, this reveals a real tension within the Western alliance. The United States bears the military weight, but expects logistical and political support. The European response shows weariness with interventions and fear of escalation. For the audience that follows the channel, this is a reminder. NATO is not a monolithic bloc. Each country calculates its energy interests and domestic risks. Neutral and firm, Trump used rhetoric to exert pressure, but the result was limited. The strait remains vulnerable, and oil prices continue to be volatile. This public exchange of criticism between allies does not help stabilize the market. You, in the U.S., feel the direct impact on inflation and investor confidence. Geopolitics today is also a battle of narratives on social media. Washington's next move will be decisive. Either it acts alone or it finds another form of coalition. Do not underestimate the weight of this exchange. It shapes American credibility in the world. Trump didn't stop. After the allies remained silent, he published a new statement. If Iran does not fully open, without threat, the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact moment, the United States of America will strike and obliterate its various power plants, beginning with the largest one first. The 48-hour deadline was put on the table as an ultimatum. Meanwhile, the U.S.-Israeli coalition escalated the conflict by attacking the Natanz nuclear facility in Iran. There was no radioactive leak, according to the Iranian statement, which notified the International Atomic Energy Agency. Iran responded by attacking Dimona in Israel, a site where, according to foreign sources, nuclear research and possibly the production of atomic weapons takes place. Israel maintains official ambiguity regarding the program. The explosions occurred exactly on schedule, as given by Trump. Iran retaliated with a symmetrical threat. If its energy infrastructure is destroyed, it will destroy that of the Gulf countries hosting American bases. An Iranian spokesperson warned that the strait would be completely closed until the power plants were rebuilt, and that targets would include Israel and companies with American capital in the region. My friends in the United States, we are facing an escalation that directly affects national security and the cost of living. Natanz and Dimona are symbols of nuclear power. The mutual attack is taking the conflict to a level that nobody wanted, with absolute neutrality. Both sides are playing with fire. Washington seeks to force the reopening of the strait. Tehran seeks to stop the offensive. The result is uncertainty that is already driving up global prices. For the American public, this means a real risk of disruption to the energy supply. The administration needs to balance military force with strategic calculation. The next 48 hours have been decisive and have shown that war is not just words. Follow the facts, not the narratives. The stability of the Middle East is fragile and affects every family here in the USA. We've reached Monday, March 23, 2026. The 48-hour deadline has expired. Trump didn't use missiles, but again, social media in capital letters. I am pleased to report that the United States of America and Iran have had over the past 2 days very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East. Based on the content of these deep, detailed, and constructive conversations, which will continue throughout the week, I have instructed the War Department to postpone any and all military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for a period of 5 days, subject to the success of ongoing meetings and discussions. Critics saw in the text a sign that Washington might offer concessions to reduce losses. In plain English, it sounds like a tactical retreat. For the first time in 4 weeks, the escalation was contained, albeit temporarily. Dear viewers, this represents a breather. For the American public, it's a momentary relief from the tension already affecting markets and prices. Trump presents the talks as productive, Iran, however, denied formal negotiations, stating that the declaration is only aimed at calming the oil market. Seriously and neutrally, the pause exists, but it is fragile. 5 days of postponement could turn into 5 weeks or 5 minutes, depending on what happens behind the scenes. Humanity has gained some luck, but common sense is still scarce. What cannot happen is a return to the previous status quo. The American military structure in the region has suffered damage that is difficult to repair, which compromises the projection of power and, indirectly, the petrodollar. Those of you watching here in the United States know, a victory declared on social media doesn't replace concrete results on the ground. The war has become a political burden for Trump. Gas prices have risen, and public opinion is demanding explanations. This pause is real, but it's not the end. Keep watching, because next week we'll decide whether the postponement becomes an agreement or just a break. Looking at the bigger picture, the United States defines victory according to its current objectives. Trump could declare mission accomplished and withdraw forces, claiming the destruction of key targets. Independent analysts, such as former CIA agent Larry Johnson, question this narrative. Iran destroyed expensive radar systems, affected the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain, and forced troop repositioning. Johnson sees the war as a political burden that Trump seeks to end. Historically, since 1945, the U.S. has been involved in major conflicts: Korea, stalemate; Vietnam, defeat; Afghanistan, return of the Taliban; Iraq, no clear victory. Iran follows this pattern, difficult to win in the classical sense. Richard Wolff calls this a war probably lost from the start. For the American public, Trump's bravado, described in his own book, The Art of the Deal, mixes fighting to the end with acknowledging that promotion is often theatrical. He may leave saying he won, leaving ruins behind. Neutral and firm, victory only exists if Washington defines what victory is. Killing leaders or destroying facilities does not guarantee stability. Ayatollah Khamenei's more radical son could take over. The petrodollar and regional influence are at stake. You deserve clarity. There is no automatic invincibility. History shows that military power does not equate to lasting geopolitical victory. The temporary suspension of sanctions on Iranian oil has a dual objective: to calm the financial market and signal flexibility. Oil is a production system that requires long-term logistical planning. The practical effect is limited, but the morale boost is immediate. Europe faces an unprecedented energy threat. With Russia sanctioned and Gulf routes threatened, the coming winter could be harsh. Trump's diplomacy oscillates between pragmatism and unpredictability. This inconsistency generates anxiety. Advances and retreats cause economic and human damage before any correction is made. My friends in the U.S., Trump's election reflected a desire for strength, but power requires balance. Iran refuses negotiations, using the American declaration to push prices down. Convincing Tehran to accept the role of the defeated will not be simple. With neutrality, the consequences are already global. What begins in the Gulf reaches American gas pumps. The fate of humanity depends on common sense. This war has changed the perception of American power forever. In conclusion, the crisis in the Middle East does not allow a return to the past. Damage to American bases, loss of influence, and questioning of the petrodollar are real. Trump may claim victory, but geopolitics demands material results. Iran has shown resilience. European allies, caution. Dear American and global viewers, this analysis is based on the facts we have. The war mixes rhetoric, oil, nuclear weapons, and social media diplomacy. Nothing is resolved, only paused. If you enjoyed this detailed and independent analysis, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share. Here you'll always get serious and direct updates. Thank you for being with me. Stay tuned because the world doesn't stop. Until next time, with more breaking news, may common sense prevail.